Okay, so we have people filing in now. I'm going to really quickly just do a promotion for the coming month. Can you see my screen or my slide? Okay, good. So, so next month we were thinking, and you know, the phrasing of this is not that we're going to be prescriptive. So how to approach faculty evaluation is, we're not prescribing how you would do it, but rather we'd like to have a discussion at the next meeting and kind of discuss with each other concerns and best practices. And our thought is that you're all encountering different stories among your faculty, and it could be a really rich experience to like just cultivate a perspective of understanding how faculty evaluation might be different during the year in which we've been dealing with COVID and reacting is the wrong word, but you know, engaging it actively. So I would caution you to think that we have totally have answers to give you, but what we're trying to do is create an opportunity for that dialogue and that discussion, and we would bring information, evidence-based evidence that's out there now, right, to the fold, but then for you to work together to kind of consider it together. So how to approach faculty evaluation this year, contemplating the impact of COVID-19. So that's the first Wednesday of the month, November 4th, from at our normal time, 12 to 2. Okay, now I will stop. I didn't mean to stop my video. I hit the wrong thing. Stop sharing. And so today's workshop is the byproduct of or is it the product of one of our department head development fellows considering the kind of workshop that would have been helpful for her to have. And so Heather Lench and a team of other department heads who she will introduce, no doubt, decided that this is the way that she wanted to, this is what she wanted to design as part of her work with us in the office that way. And from what I hear about it, it's pretty neat. So take it away, Heather.
Thank you, Heather. Okay, so hi everybody, welcome. So we're a group of fellow department heads, and we're excited to share with you today some of the resources that we've been working on that gives data and information to department heads. As far as I know, it's probably the first resource in the university that was designed for department heads to use. So that's very exciting. Long time ago in the land before COVID, you might remember, some of you, a workshop by the Dean of Faculties where they posed a question to heads about what they needed to do their jobs. That led to a lot of topics that they've been building on since then. But one of the big needs that heads noted was that they needed data to do their jobs. They needed information about students and about faculty that they could access and that was updated in real time. That issue also came up in a meeting with the Provost, and she supported a task force being created that had department heads, and the heads would work with Provost IT to develop a set of resources for heads. And so after about a year of this work, we have a platform that we can share. We wanted to share it sooner rather than later because it is useful information. So personally in my unit, I've used this information to increase our student enrollments by about 12% so far. And we want that type of information to be available to everybody as soon as possible. The task force is here today. The task force consisted of Lori Taylor, David Carnes, Patrick Stewerman, and we have a couple of representatives from Provost IT here as well, who helped us develop the platform. That was Marco Cortez and David Martin. Joe Pettibon and Juan Garza. Hi, David. Joe Pettibon and Juan Garza were also heavily involved, but they couldn't be here today. They're probably working on scheduling at the moment. This is a work in progress, so we're going to share it with you now, but we also want to hear from you about other data or other ways to access the data that you think would be helpful to you. David Carnes is going to orient us to the platform. Over in the chat, you'll see 2 links. One of those links, the top one, goes to a cheat sheet for the dashboards, and you can use that after this presentation to go through the dashboards on your own. The second link, or the second website, is to the platform itself. So that's the tableau.tamu.edu. All department heads should have access right now. If you have a problem with access, we're not going to be able to fix it during this meeting, but we can fix it afterwards. Just send an email. And the cheat sheet also includes instructions about how to request access for other people that you might want to help you on projects. So associate heads, directors, administrative staff. So that information is on the cheat sheet. Just be thoughtful about who gets access. This is more information, more detailed information that is publicly available, because you can drill down sometimes to specific student information. And so you just want to think about who needs access to the data for your unit. There's also information on the cheat sheet about who to contact if you see issues with the data. This is the same data sources that the university uses when it's looking at your unit and across units. And so if you see a potential issue, you probably do want to get that fixed because it will affect university reports and university analyses. All right. David, do you want to take it away?
Sure, I'll start talking now about the system. So just to follow on with what Heather's talked about a little bit, when we first conceived of this project, as department heads, one of the things that we began realizing was that you come into the job thinking there's a lot of data out there, and there is, but not everyone knows where to get it, and not everyone has sort of immediate access to the data that they might need. The other thing we were thinking about was that different units have very different needs for data. So a program that is primarily a graduate program might have a different need from a program that primarily teaches undergraduate service courses. So the breadth of things that are necessary for department heads to do their jobs is pretty vast. So the other interesting thing about this is that the sources for data that are out there are distributed, and they're held by very different units across campus. So some of the data that we're going to show you today we're not going to show you any new data. These are not things that the task force has said you need to go collect data on this. These are ways of packaging data that already have been collected in a way that makes them more accessible to us as department heads. So I want to talk a little bit about the way that the Provost IT has worked with us to make some of these data available. But I also want to talk a little bit about the data themselves and where we may have gotten those data in the past and what some of you may already be very comfortable with. Another thing is to sort of preempt the questions about what we don't have yet. And there's a lot of data that we as department heads would love to have. And we don't have access to it in this format yet, but we're working on it. We've been working on this for a year. We've gotten this far, but there's still certain pieces of this that are going to, that people are definitely going to want. I know that there's going to be some department head out there that says, where's the Maestro data? And we're going to tell you, we don't have it yet, all right? We do not have access to some of those data. So, or at least not in this format. You can get those data other ways, but not through the format that we're going to talk about today. So just know that there's a lot more to do, and there's a lot of things that we're working on, and we're really interested in hearing from DHs about what it is that they need. So the format that these data are presented in was, we had a couple of driving principles in this. One, make the data accessible to people in the easiest way, in an easy way. So the dashboards that we're going to talk about today are designed as best we can with the help of Provost IT. And they're the ones who've done the heavy lifting. They're the ones who've actually created these data dashboards. They're designed so that anyone from a beginner who's never used the Tableau platform before to someone who's an advanced user and really knows what can be done with these kinds of things, there's some value for everyone in it. And again, this is just a way to package the data that are already out there. So some of these things, many of you may have already seen either in a data dump from the Provost's office about an APR. Some of you may have access to it in other ways, but just recognize that we're primarily thinking about a way to present the data that is fairly easy. The other thing that we've hoped to be able to do is to make at least some of the data downloadable, so that you can access the data in a digital format, so that if there's something you want to do with it, you can access it that way and not have to transcribe it from a PDF, which I, as a department head, have done many times from a variety of different data sets, just to be able to put them into a format that I wanted them. So sometimes it was just that I needed a graph of something like student credit hour production, and the only place to get it was a PDF format. Now, hopefully some of this we're going to be rectifying through this. There are limits to what we can make downloadable, and IT can tell you more about what those limits are. But security of data needs to be sort of held as a primary goal as well. So our goals were to make it accessible, to make it downloadable when possible, and then also to keep the data safe. To do this, Provost IT identified the Tableau platform as a way that we could begin to visualize the data and provide it to a fairly broad set of people. Up until now, that set of people has been fairly closely held, but now we're releasing it to all of the department heads. And we've been a little bit nervous about this because we recognize that it's not perfect yet. So if you're going to throw sling arrows at us, we'll take them, but we're doing our best on this. So the data format that is used is the Tableau system, and Tableau is basically a data visualization software. It allows data to be manipulated and displayed in particular ways, and for it to be made available over the web. So to do that, just as a way to start this, I'm going to I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to show you what it looks like when you do log into Tableau. So let's, if I can hit the right button, I'll be in good shape here. So when you log into Tableau, this is what you see. The place to really go about this is probably go over to the Explore tab, and then there's a folder in here called Department Head Workbooks. And inside of this, if we just click through this, you'll see there's 4 different types of, or 4 different folders divided into different categories. So student recruitment, retention, visuals, enrollment, and scheduling. Some of the other people on the call today are going to talk about what the specific dashboards that are located in each of these do. I'm not going to go in and run through a dashboard with you. but some of the others will talk about the kinds of dashboards that are in there. I'll just open one of them up. Some of these are graphical, some of them are tabular, some of them you can switch back and forth. So, but by opening up one of the dashboards, you can begin to see information and interact with it about any of the topics that we have here. So all of us are comfortable with web environments, and so you probably have seen these before or seen things like this, but these are essentially our window into the central administration's data sets. These are the data they use. So these are real. And they're the ones that we wanted to make sure that you had available to you. One of the things that I also want to talk about, in addition to just sort of the Tableau format, is information about where you might get where some of these raw data are already located and some of the places that you may have seen them before. There's a couple of websites. For those of you who've been department heads for a long time, you're aware of these websites, but others of you that may be new department heads, you may never have had to go to some of these websites before. Some data are held at the DARS website, so dars.tamu.edu. And these are already prepared reports. They're not in a Tableau format. These are the published reports in case you need them. Some of those data are available here. Another place to go for some data is the accountability.tamu.edu site, which has sort of broader level data. So these published sites that are out there typically have data at more aggregated levels than the data that you're going to be able to see in the dashboards that we're going to go over. The third place, and the one that many of you may not have seen before or had access to. I was able to request access to Compass and to the Banner reports through my associate dean. And so I have these two nice little icons up here. I can enter the Compass system, or I can enter into reports. And from there, I can access Excel spreadsheets and raw data when I need it. So those are other data formats that are out there, just in case you're interested in them. For the rest of the time today, we're going to talk about the Tableau format and the different dashboards that we've been creating, and so that you have access to those and things that you can see there. Just to sort of orient this a little bit more, most of the data that the dashboards that we've developed so far are programmatic in nature. So the data are used for, can be used for program development, program sort of assessment, not in the learning objective assessment way, but ways that we can strategically make decisions about running our programs. The things you're not going to see in these data sets, you're not going to see faculty performance data. They're not here. So don't expect us to be talking about those. We don't have access to those yet. Foundation data, so about your grants or about your development opportunities over at the foundation, those are not here yet. Patent information, that's not here. OGAPS data are also not here yet. So we're working on all of those things, but mostly what we're going to be seeing are things that are available in Compass and other types of data sets that will allow you to begin making decisions about programmatic types of things. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to, or turn it back to Heather, so that Heather can lead us into the next section. I'm not sure who's next, basically.
Yeah, no, that's fine. David Martin, did you have any additional information about the data sources or the platform that you would like to share? So David Martin is from Provost IT and DARS.
Yes, as was mentioned, we mostly have student data. There's also course and some faculty data. All of that relates to official reporting we do, so that most of the information we have comes from snapshots that are taken on the 12th and 20th class day. And so the one exception to that is there's some degree planner data that's updated more regularly than that. But we report to the state and to the feds, so that there's actually sort of 4 or 5 different ways that we slice things. There's also what we call TAMU, which is everything, which includes data that's not reportable to either the state or the feds. But,
Thank you. And thank you for your help with the dashboards. And then let's see, Pat, you were going to lead us through student recruitment.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. Thanks, David. The reason I'm doing student recruitment is because when I got here, I came from civil engineering program that had moved from 20% females to 25% females in between the 2 times I was teaching there. And I was really excited that we were growing. And when I came to the construction science program here in the College of Architecture, I thought we would be comparable, but I found out we were 91% male and probably about 60 to 70% Caucasian and white. And so if we're going to have a program that looks like a bunch of Johnny Lawrence Cobra Kai people who look like me, then we could not look at the data. But in order to try to solve that problem here in the program, I thought this was a great asset. So let me share my screen here. And so there was a comment in the chat, and normally when I'm talking, I can't actually see the chat, so I'll ask Heather to look at the chat. But if you had a problem accessing it, that's one thing David Martin can help, or Marco Cortez can help with. But I would say also make sure that you use your Duo authentication, because sometimes it'll send a notice to your phone and it doesn't really tell you that it is. And so you just have to go check your phone, do the Duo login, and then you can get into Tableau. So just like David was talking about, I did not know, I'm in my 4th year now as department head, but I didn't know about DARS or accountability until I started in this committee. So definitely recommend you look in there. And a lot of the things I'm going to show you in here actually could be done in there, and maybe you'll like that interface better. But having taught architectural software in the past, what I normally do when I'm doing a computer interface is, unless I see chat or somebody tells me to stop, I just talk about what I'm doing. And I always, if I have any kind of a new computer interface, I look at the top to bottom, left to right. And so and then also I repeat myself. Usually I say the same thing 3 times. So that way you can pick up to my pace, unlike the Interfolio class, which was lightning fast, I would say, for trying to teach somebody a computer interface. So make sure, like David said, you go to the Explore tab. You're going to most likely, if you do have access, you're going to have the department heads workbooks, and then there's the 4 folders. The whole time I'm going to be in here, I'm going to be showing you how to navigate within the student recruitment folder. So coming in here, I'll just click on the first one and we'll just go left to right. And I'm going to show you my program first, because I'm going to show you something that I learned about my own program that really surprised me. So you click on the item, and then it clicks on the interface and it shows you the dashboard again. We already talked about this, but if you hover over that information button, if it just looks like a sea of numbers and you want to say, well, what is this one for again? That's awesome. It's sort of like metadata if you're a GIS person on your layers or something like that. So you look at that and it tells you what it is and what it's useful for. And then you come over here, it's always usually going to default to agriculture and life sciences because it's typically alphabetical. But so I'm going to come down to architecture. Then I'm going to come down to construction science, which is my department. And so most of these, if I look at another department, unless it's the department heads in my own college, I might bag on them for trends that I've noticed in other departments within my college. Just kidding. But if you have somebody, if you're a department head out there and you raise your hand, you want me to look at yours for everyone, let me know. But I'll show you mine a couple times, and I might show some other departments. But this is something I'm going to be a little vulnerable right now. And I saw this yesterday and it blew my mind. So I got here in 2017, and talking to another one of my administrators here in the department, I sent him our application and enrollment patterns. I'm going to try and make this a little bit larger so maybe you can see it better. So in 2015, we had 127 applicants to our master's program. And if I had 127 applicants right now, I would be elated. But we decided that we should only admit 7 females out of 30 applicants and 22 out of 97 males. And so of the people we admitted, only 17 of them came to the program. And so as the other person I shared this with in the department said, he said, apparently we didn't want females and we also thought we were Harvard. And so these are the types of things that, especially if you're a new department head, what I noticed is we pretty much were admitting so few people that we started getting the same number of applicants of the people we were admitting, because I think word probably got out. We're a very industry focused major. And these are the types of things that it doesn't take long on some of these queries that you start to see stories. And so the numbers are just the beginning. And that's the part that now at least I'm armed a little bit when I go talk to my industry advisory council tomorrow on why the masters was so small. But we now grew 47% on the masters this year. But I'm going to own the numbers right there. Yes, we've been admitting a lot more people, but also I've been glad that they've also been of high quality. But that boggles my mind on the admittance rate that we used to have in 2015. And I think we've got some ripple effects that I'm trying to overcome. So now if you want to get back to wherever you were, I'll bring your attention. Hopefully you can see my mouse. Wherever you are is up here, and it's just like in Windows Explorer, we're in application and enrollment pattern. So if I want to go back to student recruitment again, just click on that and it's all hyperlinked. And then I'll click on the next one, and in diversity profile, this has the most information in it. It's got 4 different views, and it's still all the same information pretty much. Let's see what I'll check the chat since I moved categories. Let's see what the chat says.
I don't see anything there right now.
Okay, I don't even know where the chat went. It's somewhere on my computer, but anyways, so yeah, I guess I can't check that. But so if you click on that diversity profile again, it's in agricultural area, and I just want to take a time starting at the top again. Those 4 areas, they're all up here too on these tabs. So the 4 views that we saw in the folder, we don't have to go back to the diversity profile to see them. They're all right here. So you could click through all 4 of the views. And so just like in any kind of a computer program, there's 27 ways to skin the cat. Sorry, Blanca and Heather. But okay, so architecture, construction science, and surprise, surprise, 68.5% white, 70.9% white, 68.7% white. We're hovering always around 70% white in construction science. And so I thought, well, I talked about the civil engineering, so I'm gonna, hopefully it's okay with Robin. I'm gonna go see if I can go to engineering. So, and that's one interesting thing. If you noticed right there, I forgot I got to do what I'm saying. It was still stuck on construction science right here. And so when I tried to go back up to college and change it to engineering, it's not going to work, I don't think. So what I've done is I just go to all in the department, and then now I can change the college again. So just like I tell my students, if something's not working, just keep on clicking or try right clicking, and you'll be surprised at how much you can do. So if I go to engineering and then I try to go look at one of our peers with Robin in civil engineering, I see that, hey, wait a second, they're way less percentage on whites, but what's the story there? And so again, the numbers are the start, and then it begins the conversation. Well, they have a lot more international students in their undergrad program, most likely, compared to ours. We have a fair amount of international students in our master's program, but not too many in the undergrad program. However, we are now STEM coded, and I've heard that I think that's appealing to a lot of international students, and I think we might get more international students in the undergrad as well. So that is the chart, and then and so if you like that, that's one thing. But if you like tabular data, a little bit more of the data here, you can start to see how you can do things. And so I'll get back into my comfort zone. I'll go to architecture. And then I'm going to pick on Shannon Van Zandt for a second. And that's one of the things that while we are 91% male in construction science, there are a lot of other departments who are almost the reverse. Like visualization is very heavily enrolled with female students, as well as some of the 6 programs that are within landscape architecture and urban planning. And so that's sometimes, if you're a department that has one major like ours, we have one major and one master's right now, hope to soon get a PhD. But there's other departments like landscape who you can slice and dice this to your heart's content. They have 6 different programs within that one department. So I just want to bring that to your attention. And then you can also divvy this up here. So then for diversity profile for entry, really just the same data set, lots of different views. And while I'm at it, these views were all made for us. And that's one of the things that if you are super into data like David and the people who are on this committee, you're going to want to start to make your own custom queries like maybe you used to do in Access or something like that. We don't really have that ability currently. So if there is something that you want, that's definitely the type of thing to jot down, and Marco and David and Joe and this whole team are very responsive. So we'll go back to student recruitment, and then I'll go to, I like this one better. I'm going to go to high schools for admitted freshmen, and then I'm going to click on that view. And here's what I found from this one. I'll show you my department again, just because it's the one I've looked at the most. This one, at first, I didn't know if it was going to be beneficial or not, but partly because we used to have it sorted by high school name, and then we switched it to high school city. And I think I like it better this way now, because what I'm going to show you is I've lived in San Antonio and the San Antonio area several times now, and so I'm pretty familiar with San Antonio high schools, especially having some kids in high school in Spring Branch area right now. But if I show you San Antonio, now I can see all the high schools that are in San Antonio, and let's see here. Well, this is interesting because this actually looks different from the data that I saw yesterday when I did my final prep for this. Maybe I was looking at a different year or something, but oh, I know what it was. I think I looked at the whole program. Yeah, it's still a little bit different than I expected, so that's interesting. And I have had that before where things change around. But what I would say that I think might be beneficial here, and I'm sure you're probably hopefully checking and clicking on your own items already, is I noticed that there are some hotbeds of schools where we will have 1 year where 6 different students all come from the same high school. And then you might have a lull. And so those are the types of schools I would try to say, well, why did we have so many people who are all interested from that same high school? And obviously we have some affinity from that area, and maybe we can double down on the pipeline that we seem to have already enjoyed. And so, or maybe you go back and look and say, oh, we haven't had people from this area, or if you're familiar with certain schools for your targeted talks to counselors or so forth, now you actually have an ability to see where the students are coming from. And
yeah, Patrick, you can also use it to figure out whether or not your efforts at outreach are working. Whether if you're communicating with counselors at a particular high school, is that panning out in terms of students from that school? It's way cool.
Excellent. So SATs automatically came up on engineering. I'm not really sure why on that one, but I'll go back to ours again. And this was interesting to me. So you can start to just have more informed conversations with your other co-department heads within your college. And we have a university studies architecture major, which when President Gates did away with the general studies major and it went to the different colleges, there's, I don't know, like 10 or 16 different general studies majors within colleges. Ours is university studies architecture. And my theory was that people who can't get into construction science might want to go into university studies architecture. But what I found very interesting, at least in the fall of 19, is they have higher SAT scores than our program does. So these things that you sort of perpetuate that are pejorative in nature, sometimes you start to find out like, well, I better check myself before I say something, because the data doesn't suggest what I was trying to perpetuate. So that was an eye opener for me. And then you can get as deep as you want There's a separate one for ACT, and then the SAT one actually has SAT and ACT on it. So that's another part that you need to be familiar with. But so yeah, I think that's my time. And unless there's something in the chat or a question, thanks for the opportunity to share with you. And definitely, if you have any historically underrepresented students who are interested in construction, please send them our way. And they're easy to identify. They're anyone other than white males. So thank you.
Let's see. So there are some comments in the chat about things that people would like to see on the dashboards. So what we'll do after this meeting is we'll download the chat and work with Provost IT to try to add some of these features that you guys are noting. So please keep sending those as you work through your own dashboards. If there are things that you want or need in those dashboards or different ways to look at things, please keep sending those because this is, like I said, an ongoing project. There's a question about when new data will be available. David Martin, do you know that? Or Marco, if he's here?
It's in the fall, it's always a work in progress. Some of it's been updated. I can't tell you for sure which ones, but it's usually in this next, I'd say month that most of it should be updated.
Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna share my screen next. Okay, so you guys should be able to see it now. I'm going to talk a little bit about student recruitment, or I'm sorry, student retention. I'm not going to go through all of the dashboards, but I'm going to show you some of the things that I used these dashboards for in our program here. So when you're thinking about student retention, the big questions that you ask yourself are, are students staying in your program? And if they're not, what students are leaving, who's leaving your program, and where are they going? And there's a couple of dashboards in here that can help you dig into that question and try to figure out what's happening in your programs. So one of those dashboards gives you an overview of the number of degrees awarded over time. So like Patrick, I'm going to pick my own department because I know where the skeletons are buried. So this is the number of degrees awarded dashboard. And for us, up here at the top, I see the grand total of students in all of our programs over time. And I see a general upward trend, right? So more students are enrolling across all of our programs. And then I can also look at the table down below to get more specific information about trends within specific programs. So as an example for us, if I look at our BA and BS undergraduate programs, I can see a tendency, at least, for more students to be enrolled in our BS program compared to our BA program over time, right? So it's moving from 68% of our students in the BS program in 2015-2016 to, was it 78-ish percent in 2018-2019, right? So that gives me useful information about students' choices over time and directs me towards potential programs that I could think about developing that might focus more on our BS program or, try to increase excitement around the BA program, right? Depending on the goals of the unit. You can drill further down into this data if you want to do so. So maybe you want to focus only on undergraduate degree programs. And maybe you're interested in student retention of certain groups, right? So the president has stated an objective to have our student demographics better approximate the demographics of the state, right? So maybe you're particularly interested in retention for Latinx students. And this breakdown box allows you to look specifically at that student demographic group. I hope. Okay. So one thing that happens when I select this group is that the total number of students gets a lot smaller. And so the numbers become more variable, right? Just because there are fewer students that are contributing to the totals. But within this Latinx group, I can see that it looks like the greatest growth in number of students over time is occurring in our BS program, and to a greater extent than in our BA program. So again, that gives me some ideas about where I might want to focus if one of my goals is to increase retention for this specific student demographic group. The other question that you have, right, when you're thinking about student retention is, where are students going when they leave you? That information is in the progression paths dashboard. Two of these right now are college level dashboards. This is the department level dashboard. So you have access to all of those, but usually you're probably going to focus on the department level information. This gives information across time on students who start in your program, and it tells you where they're going, right? It is cohort based. So for this particular example that pulled up, this is the fall 2014 first time in college cohort. I can select my department. And this gives me the head counts and the percentages of students who started with us in our programs in fall 2014. So for us, in this particular cohort, we started with 143 students. The following year, we had 111 students, right? Which means that 32 students left our program. Potentially most concerning is the blue on these bars. So these are the students who were not enrolled. So they didn't just switch to another college or another department, they left the university. And you can see that for this cohort, that number of students who are not enrolled increases over time. So from 2014, more students are leaving the university. If you're concerned about the university level retention, you can drill down further into student demographic characteristics to try to figure out who you're losing, right? So are there particular groups of students who are leaving the programs at greater numbers? And if there are, that gives you some ideas about where to focus your efforts. On the bottom down here, there's just two other ways to look at this information. These are bubbles, right? That gives you the percentage of students. And this is a table that gives you the exact same information. So these are just different ways of looking at the same data. You can change the cohort year pretty easily up here by scanning through years. And because it's color coded, you can scan back and forth and get some idea about patterns over time by scrolling through cohort years. You might also be interested in college or department retention. And in that case, the gray bar is relevant. So here, the gray bars are students who changed departments but stayed in our college. So they left our department programs, but they stayed within the college when they switched. The other bars tell you other colleges that your students moved to. Right, so here we had 5 students that moved to general studies, some moving to business, and some moving to education during the next year. If we go to 2019, at this point, most of the students have graduated. So they've graduated from Texas A&M. And so this lets you look at where students are finishing who started in your program. So for us, we had a fairly large number of students who ultimately graduated from education, and a fairly large number that graduated from Mays, as well as other liberal arts departments. So this gives me an idea of where to look for possible opportunities to develop collaborations or paths for students, right? So if students are entering our major, but discovering or planning that they want to graduate from education or MAIS, maybe I can develop paths within our major to facilitate that and help them make that transition faster and more efficiently. This also can give you information about time to degree and potential intervention points. So if you look at 2017 and 2018, those are usually points where we would have liked students to have graduated and moved on with their lives. And so this gives me some ideas about where students are going who take longer to graduate from the university. And so I might think about developing programs to help transition those students faster and more efficiently into the program where they eventually graduate. There are also a number of other dashboards in here that you could drill into more deeply to try to get some ideas about why students are leaving your programs. And again, this just gives you a hint about where to look. It doesn't give you the definite answer. So one of those dashboards is the undergraduate GPR changes across programs. And I'll select my program again. So this gives you information about the average GPR of students at different class levels. So for us, this is the average GPR for students as freshmen in our major. And this is the average ending GPR for freshmen in our major. And so what this shows me is that there's a pretty big jump in GPR that first year, and then it's relatively stable after that point. There's not really a change in students' GPR. I can also get information about the rest of the college. So that I can compare how students are progressing in my program to the progress of students in other programs within the same college. As part of that, it gives you the rank of the students' average GPR within the college. So for us, our students' GPR at the start of freshman year was 7th highest in the college, and it was 10th highest at the end of their freshman year. Right. So students in other programs are having a bigger jump in GPR than students in our programs in freshman year. But by the time they are seniors, our students' GPR is 3rd highest in the college. Right. So this might suggest to me that there's something happening during freshman year compared to other programs in the college that could be having an impact on student success. Right. And so that might be a place to look further. One of the dashboards that I might look at next to try to figure out what's happening in freshman year is the dashboard about graduation and retention based on specific course grades as freshmen. So if I get into that dashboard, it shows me the percentage of students who are retained after the first year and information about graduation patterns for students based on their grade in a particular class that is commonly taken by freshmen. So it pulls up biology 111 as a default, but you can change the specific course using the drop down over here. So let's see, if I pick my department again,
And Heather, we have a lot of good comments in the chat when you get to a good spot to address.
Oh, yeah, I can stop. Or okay, yeah, I can go. So this is our major, our students in my department. And I'm going to look at the Math 141 grades as an example. So here, you know, if we're focused on retention, I'm really interested in this blue bar that gives the percentage of students retained after the first year. And what I see is that students tend to be retained university-wide if they're getting A, B's, C's, or even D's in Math 141. But if they get an F, that retention rate drops to about 67%. It also gives, down here on the bottom, it gives a table that has the head counts. So I can see that the students who received Fs, 9 students received Fs in this course. And most students received a B or a C in the course. So that also gives me information about the number of students impacted. In the example that we've been talking about, we might be particularly interested in Latinx students, and you can select particular groups of students to look at how class grades are related to retention for those students. And here too, for Latinx only students, you see the same general pattern with maybe a larger impact for retention if students failed Math 141. So again, this just gives me a hint about places that I might want to look to potentially offer interventions or additional support for our students. Okay, and Pat, I cannot see the chat, so.
If you exit full screen, then you can see it. I think that's the problem I had a second ago, but mostly a lot of people were writing to everyone, and that's good because then we can, if we do a data dump of all the chat at the end, we can hand that over to the data team because mostly people are asking for different views or new things that we don't currently have. There's some appreciation though here, and a lot of people are noticing, like Jerry, that this is pretty powerful. But then there's a lot of great ideas on things like Pat Rubio Goldsmith says, knowing where our students are going is nice, but I like to see where they come from, not just the high schools. There's a talk about showing minors, and then there's which I don't think we currently have, and then also meta majors in engineering is hard. Similar to us, we have only a third is traditional freshman admits, and then we have change of major and transfer students, and so there's definitely some holes, but these are the things that we can use to fill this out with the data experts.
Yeah, I think one of our goals with this session today is to help prioritize where to go next. What are the things that would be most useful to department heads, and so giving us information through the chats is going to be really helpful in guiding the data looks that we add to this set of workbooks for department heads.
Yeah. And knowing where students come from is probably a low-hanging fruit because that information is already available in the dispersion backwards dashboard at the college level. So all we need to do is make a similar dashboard or encourage Marco and David to make a similar dashboard for at the department level. And it would give you information about where students are coming from who ultimately graduate from your major. Okay. And then I was asked to show you one more dashboard, which is actually in the enrollment and scheduling folder, and it's the degree plan data. So this data pulls from the student planners, degree planners that your students fill out. And so what that means is that it's not perfect and it's not perfectly accurate. So students do change their degree planners over time, they change their minds. And they don't fill out the degree planner until they finish 30 hours, which means that this information will be seriously underestimated for freshman level courses in particular. So it's not perfect, but it gives you some ideas for scheduling. And I'll show you some of those that I noticed for my unit. So over here, you can select specific courses. And I'm going to select one of our introductory courses. So This is Psych 107, so Introduction to Psychology. The degree planner data tells me that 185 students are planning to take it in spring 2020. I know from past experience that that's actually about 3,000 students. And so this freshman level enrollment is a serious underestimate. And so I would not use the degree planner for this type of evaluation. But if I look at courses that we offer less frequently, it becomes a lot more useful. So this is Psych 352, which we don't offer very often. And what I am seeing here is that there's actually a lot of students who are expressing interest in taking this class. So these numbers are probably underestimates. And so this suggests to me that maybe we want to think about adding 100 or 150 person section of this course in the near future, because it kind of looks like there's a backlog of demand, right? There's a lot of students who seem interested in this course, probably because we haven't offered it recently. And so I might want to think about doing that. This dashboard also will allow you to select by program. So if you want to know if the demand's coming from your majors or your college or other colleges, you can figure that out by selecting different programs. And so it's not great at perfectly predicting enrollments, but it is really useful to give you an idea of what students are interested in, and if there might be a backlog demand for particular courses. All right, I'm gonna stop talking and hand it off to Lori.
Great. So wonderful. My task is to share with you the information that I have on the enrollment and scheduling dashboards. So let me share that with you. Before we do, are there anybody that has any specific questions that they would have for any of us in the group? So if not, then I will go forward with talking a bit about the enrollment and scheduling dashboards that we have. One of them that is particularly useful is the degree planner that Heather's already told you about. And this is something that we as department heads have wanted for a period of time, because we don't have good demand signals for what courses to offer. And this particular dashboard is really helpful with providing that information. Another dashboard in the department head workshops on enrollment and scheduling is just enrollment in courses over semesters. This is information that is useful just to look for trends in whether or not enrollment is declining or rising. Most of us have access to this kind of information for ourselves on a regular basis, but it's still useful to take a look and see what's going on with perhaps another department in your unit, or with a particular course that you haven't been following especially closely. So you can see the enrollment in courses over academic years. You can look at substantially longer periods of time than just the last 3 years. So you can really detect strong trends in enrollment. You can see whether the enrollment is strongest in fall or spring semesters. It just gives you one place to make comparisons across courses rather than having to compile that data internally yourself. So this is going to save my department the work of trying to pull this together ourselves. So so it's just generally a very helpful thing. Another piece in the department head workshops that I didn't really have access to before, that I'm finding a very useful piece of information, is sitting here and looking at the student characteristics enrolled in each class, which is a dashboard that allows me to see the students that are enrolled in the various classes and what is their their grade level? Are we talking about juniors, seniors, graduate students for the various classes? This is within the Bush School, so we're a small unit. There's a lot of empty spots. We've got U4 undergraduates, and then we've got mostly masters in the various classes. It's telling us, for example, here that Bush 631 is a course where we have one econ undergrad and 26 master's students from the International Affairs Department and 17 master's students from the Department of Public Service and Administration. So it's going to give us head counts and student credit hours for the various courses, which is useful information. If there are students in your classes that aren't coming from your college, where are they coming from? If there's an interest on the part of students from political science in this course, then maybe I will do more to advertise the existence of this course amongst the counselors and the student body of that particular course. Another thing I find really useful myself is that I can look in, say, liberal arts here at in the College of Liberal Arts and look at the students coming out of my department. So choosing my department, but looking in the College of Liberal Arts as to who in my college is taking what over in liberal arts. So by making this particular choice, I can see that within the College of Liberal Arts, very recently, I have students taking a couple of courses in econometrics from the Department of Economics. And in the spring of 2019, I had a student in political science and one student in psych. But spring of 2019 might not be the time frame that I want to look at. Maybe I want to look over an extended period of time. I can identify which courses my master's students are taking away from my department to identify potential opportunities for cross-listing courses, to identify potential courses for my counselors to advise students that, look, we've had a large number of students that have chosen over time, have chosen to take this particular course, that Econ 633 is particularly popular with students from my program. So this is probably a course that would be a good fit for you. So it helps me with advising, and it helps me with identifying potential cross-listed courses. We recently got a request from the registrar to identify courses that might be of general interest outside of my unit. By looking here, I can identify kind of past patterns in terms of which of my courses have appealed to students from various units on campus. And it just gives me a really powerful opportunity to look not only at who's taking my classes, but also of what classes elsewhere are my students taking. Now, it wouldn't be that I would want to poach in any way, but it might help me identify that there's an unmet need amongst my students for coursework in econometrics or coursework in labor economics that I might be able to offer internally. I'm not going to be able to pick that up without similar kinds of information. So I think that this is a particularly useful opportunity. Another piece of information that I think is has the potential to become very useful going forward is information also in the enrollment and scheduling folder, looking at the student credit hours and the weighted student credit hours associated with particular courses. I have a pretty good feel on the student credit hours for various courses. I don't have, or didn't have until I had this tool, near so much insight into the weighted student credit hours being generated by each of the courses in my unit. And I think that that's potentially particularly valuable. If I scroll down here to, I've selected my college and scroll down here to look at within my department, I can see the various courses, the student credit hours, and then the weighted student credit hours. This is important for us as a master's program Some of the students are undergrads, some of the students are doctoral students. Where are the weighted student credit hours coming from? I can sort by selecting on the weighted student credit hour column heading and see which of my courses are generating the largest number of weighted student credit hours over the course of this period of time. Identify that it's the course I teach. So of course this is a positive signal as a department head, but it's also going to help me identify some of the courses in my unit that are not really attracting very many students and not attracting students with a substantial amount of weighted student credit hours attached. If we do wind up going to a budgeting model where weighted student credit hours are more important, having insight on this, in particular being able to identify errors in the data, but also being able to identify opportunities in the data might be a really important tool for me as a department head. So we wanted to share these tools with all y'all so that you too would have the information that we have available to us in thinking about what's going on at in our departments and in our colleges. So over to you, Heather.
Okay, so this is useful information, hopefully to department heads. We really hope it is. And just as a reminder, you know, don't be evil with the data, but
Yeah, okay.
You know, there are lots of ways that you can use this. So we've talked a lot about using the data for planning purposes and program purposes. Obviously, you can also use it to petition your college for additional instructors for types of courses based on what you're seeing in the data. You can also use it for reports that show your progress relative to others in your college or in the university. So it is potentially useful in a lot of different ways that heads are often trying to plan and respond to things.
Right, and Melinda asked if this would be the best place to search for the total numbers of outside measures that your department is serving. Yes, definitely, this would be a good place to get that kind of information, to identify which departments you are serving and to be able to look across multiple years.
So for a few minutes so first I want to thank everybody, but in the few minutes that we have left, I would also like to ask you guys to take a few minutes to think about other resources that you would like to have access to in an easy format. Most of this information, as I think Lori said, is focused on undergraduate student data. We have some graduate student data, but not a lot, and no right now faculty level data. And so if there's certain information that you really want, please take a minute and put that in the chat at the undergraduate, graduate, or faculty level information, because that will help us prioritize work on this task force so that we can try to get you the things that you really want the fastest. And while people are doing that, I'll say thank you to the Dean of Faculties and the Provost IT for their support. We have renamed Provost IT Joe Pettibon's kick-ass data team. Yes, they've been fantastic to work with. And as we said, we will keep working on this. Heather Wilkinson is saving the chat so that we have the information that you've given or the questions you've asked, and we'll keep working on the dashboard. We'll also update the cheat sheet if there are changes to the dashboard so that you know what's on there.
Does anybody have any department in particular they'd like us to pull up and look at? I know that some of you had some trouble getting access to Below at this time, so we'd be glad to kind of use you as an illustrative example if you'd care. Who do you contact about missing courses? David Martin, any ideas? Heather's got an answer.
David Martin is not a bad choice. Actually, the best way to ask about things on this would be to email dars@tamu.edu. that comes to me, but it's also monitored when I'm not in the office. So
I'll note that on the cheat sheet, the PDF that you guys have, the overview gives information about who to contact if you need access for yourself or other people, or you're having issues. It also gives information about who to contact if you notice an error or something missing. And then if you want more detailed download information, you can also petition to have that more detailed information provided to you. And instructions for how to do that are all in the PDF that you guys have.
Robin had a good question, David, if you can merge departments who change their name so they're not bifurcated with their old department name and their new department name.
we try to manage that. The easiest solution is that departments stop doing that. But
Okay.
Not a good solution.
I probably should have had my video on to show that I was smiling when I made that suggestion.
Well, you were smiling on the outside.
Yeah. What really gets us is when we merge with large entities, but that's another, or buy a particular kind of school or something.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier, I talked about what data weren't available, and that was just for our discussions today. As department heads, what do you want to see? What data that we don't have access to yet do you want us to advocate to Provost IT that they put at the top of the list for the next dashboard? Is it Maestro data? Is it OGAPS data? What is it that you want?
Could we get any data on the amount of jobs that our students are getting and where they're going? Is that something the university can track and provide us as department heads to justify degrees and other things?
I think there is an exit survey. Mike Stevenson's group actually has data on that. We've not tackled that one yet, Melinda. So that's a good suggestion.
Mm-hmm. Did we see a dashboard one time that they created for OGAPS about where PhD students are going after they graduate?
I think we have it at the doctoral level. I'm not sure that we have it for the undergrads.
But if they could do it at the PhD level, it seems like it is at least possible to do it at the undergraduate.
There was a question that was sent to me privately, and then also it's good when you do it to everyone, so that way we can document all the chat comments. But their plan to give rights to staff and associate department heads, which that's not up to me, but if I would say that data is the most useful when more people can look at it. Yeah, we could give, I'll volunteer Heather Lench to do another training for associate department heads and staff when they're given rights.
We have now empowered you to train your, your fellows. And the cheat sheet, the idea is to help orient people. So, I mean, they'll need to get in and play, but if they have the cheat sheet, at least gives them instructions about where to look and what they're seeing. So it should be enough to get people started. Mm-hmm.
I think the intent was to provide data that A&M already has in very user-friendly kinds of ways. So just, if you know it's there, it's really just, we encourage everybody to just get in there and play. Pull up your unit and see what you know and see what you can find. It can be particularly interesting.
I have a question. Does the data drive down to whether or not a graduate student is an instructor of record?
That information is not there right now, but the Dean of Faculties is also working on making data more available. And so that could be something that we could add in the future.
Because I know in our case, I know Patrick and I are in the same college, but you know, one of our Raising the Bar initiative is to try to facilitate PhD students teaching, or all graduate level students teaching. And it doesn't seem to be a way to actually see if that's actually happening through this dashboard, but it would be helpful if we could mine down to which levels, so break down the SCHs and the WSCHs a little bit more.
That is in some report, right? So who's teaching, there's some report about who's teaching who?
The STAR report on DARS has some of that information, I think.
And if it's there, we can grab it. We just need to know priorities. Is that more important, or is it more important for us to get the department level, where are they coming from, information?
Well, that's one of the challenges that we've faced from the beginning, is it all feels really important. Right? And we would like it all.
To answer Marwan's question, I did an ABET accreditation in 2014, and you can have data that will help you fill out your self-study, but the SLOs are determined for direct assessment and by you. So I mean, I don't think that's in a university database. I'd have to ask other engineering professors about that. But.
Yeah, so there was a suggestion for a follow-up meeting once people have a chance to look through their dashboards a little bit more. If that's possible and there's interest, we can try to do that. But I'd also encourage you to feel free to send emails. I'm going to volunteer everybody to any of us, yes, on the task force, and that will help us in our work, because there's a lot of priorities and we can't do it all at once. And so the more information we get from you, the better. And there are also lots of ways to present this information that are pretty impressive. If you look in the visuals folder, there's a pretty cool diagram about where students are going within the university. It's probably not very helpful for department heads, or I don't know how I would use it, but it gives you a demonstration of the type of visuals that they can create for this type of data. So it might generate some ideas.
So let me share the Sankey diagram that Heather is talking about, because it's really kind of cool, which is just giving you the opportunity to look at where the students are coming from and where they're going across the various cohorts. So you can see that the students start out in a variety of places. General studies students, you can track fraction of them going into ag and life sciences, and a massive chunk going into, unfortunately, the not graduated category or into maize. And this is the kind of information that's probably being presented in a way more useful to deans than to department heads. But if there is interest and demand for visualizations like this, I think they can be produced in ways that would be useful to department heads. We just need to make sure that if the work goes into developing these resources, that they will in fact meet a need amongst someone who isn't a data wonk on the committee already. So feedback would be really helpful.
I noticed a question. I'm assuming it's about this diagram. Can it be done at the department level?
Yes.
It can, but you can see how chaotic this chart is if you then turn that into however many departments we have as the source. It really gets sort of chaotic.
Is there a way to drill down on a single major, and then if you know that there's been shifts in time and you have a hypothesis about what's happening and you want to test that hypothesis? So I'm talking about, our major is bioenvironmental sciences. It's in the College of Agriculture out of the Department of Plant Pathology. And we have enrollment patterns that I'd like to understand better. I think that, you know, the College of Engineering has created an environmental major. The College of Public Health has created an environmental major. There's the Department of Biology has done a lot of student success initiatives and stuff. So we're getting changes in the students moving either into our major or I don't know that a lot are leaving, but we're not getting the same kinds of students coming into the major. And so I would just like to be able to look at that at a fine grain. It seems like that's what you guys are saying I could do. That's all I'm trying. I'm just trying. Could one look at that if you thought you saw a pattern?
This also focuses specifically on if you started in a college and then went to another major, another college. One thing that I think it was Heather mentioned, that there was opportunity for looking at possible collaborations amongst the units across the university, which would be very helpful to see too. So Heather, just essentially building upon what you're saying, if there's other types of synergies that can come out of the data.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the most useful way to look at it, because it's easy to get into a zero-sum game with other departments, but ultimately we're all part of the same big organization. And so if we can build collaborations or, you know, increase enrollments across the board by making things better for students, that seems like the best way to use this type of information.
I think the goal would be to identify how do we get them into the right place at the right time. How do we identify ways to ensure students are going the right place at the right time, right? Not how do we stop them from moving or anything like that. But,
well, unless there is a problem that's causing them to move, then
right, of course.
we'd want to address that. Yeah.
Right. So for example, Heather was looking earlier at Latinx students. And so this Sankey diagram can be done for specific demographic groups, which I think makes it's really useful at the college level. It could wind up being very useful at the department level as well.
But for any of these dashboards, there are lots of options for the visuals to go with them. And so that's also one of the things that we've been working on is, you know, what is the most useful way to present this data to help you visualize what's happening. And so if you have ideas along that line too, you know, definitely share those ideas. So are there particular dashboards that we looked at as a table? But if you had that as a bar chart, would that be better or more useful? Or as a flow chart? You know, what is the best, most useful way for you to see this information?
Along those same lines, a lot of times your query or question begets another question. And so sometimes the tabular data is better. But as far as visuals, at first we cautioned David not to show his visuals, but if you're willing to share, David, he's taken this to the next level and he already created his own interface of tables and charts. If you're willing to share
yeah, I can. Just a second. I don't know if it's ready. I wasn't ready for that.
So while you're doing that, I'll try to answer Heather Wilkinson's question. It's up to Joe Pettibone and the university on who they want to have access. And so right now for department heads to have access, I think Blanca and Heather gave them the list of current department heads, and then they make a swath of all those people on that list get these sorts of rights. So that would be the hard part about the questions asked earlier about staff is, I mean, if we just said, okay, all staff, that'd be, or if you don't know what you're really doing, because that's a humongous group of people, or you'd have to sit there and individually each person as they requested or something. So I'd have to defer to David and Marco on that one.
So I had a follow-up with Joe Pettibone about access because this question was likely to come up. And he's agreed to have it be open to anyone that the department head views as needing access to the data. So you can request it for administrative staff, associate heads, directors, anyone that you view as needing to know the information. But again, you do need to be thoughtful because in some cases you can drill down to specific student information, right? You can get to the one student from a particular high school, from a particular demographic group. And so you can identify them. So there are potential FERPA issues here. And so you just want to make sure that when you're saying it's okay for somebody to have access, that they do need that access about student information.
Do we know, Heather, whether it's going to be possible to give access only to some of the workbooks and not other workbooks? For example, if I wanted somebody who was doing advising to have access to one workbook but not another.
So Marco, who helped us on a lot of this development, gave me a screenshot of his access in Tableau. And I think it should be possible to do that. I think probably their preference would be all or none, just because it's easier to set up. But he can go into each dashboard and give access to specific people only to that dashboard, or only for particular functions. So if you want them to be able to see it but not interact with it or that kind of thing, you can give them that access.
Okay, did you want me to show this thing?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
All right.
Now, this is kind of like inviting one of those professional basketball players to come to your pickup game. It makes all the rest of us feel grossly inadequate, but that's just because David's been working at it for years and he's really into this stuff.
Okay, so yeah, and I'm a little nervous about it, but okay, not because of what's in there, but because it could be better. So this is the dashboard that I've used for my department, and it's based on the raw data. So this is not the Tableau stuff, but it's all the same data sources, because I started doing this before some of the other people did. And so I've got things in here like I can look at IDC contributions for particular years. So this is, that's how much IDC we've got this year. We're not a big research department in terms of dollar amounts, but I have it drilled down to the point where I know which faculty are contributing to IDC and by how much. Total research expenditures, student credit hour productions. See, there's another one here that I could show. That the other one I have is committee information for faculty. So how many graduate committees our faculty are sitting on? These kinds of things. So it's just different. It's where we want to be able to get the Tableau stuff to. We just haven't been able to ingest all of these different data sources yet. And the data sources that I'm using for this are, they're not secret data sources or anything like that. They're publicly available for like the trends in SCH data, or they come off the STAR report, which is on the DARS data portal.
And they're now in this template.
And they're now in
the student credit hours and the weighted student credit hours are now available, and you can pull them. You can look at them in Tableau, and you can pull them out of Tableau.
Yeah. So these are just the things that are important to me. I have information about graduate student progression. I have a whole bunch of different things, but this is what I've spent a lot of my time as DH creating these things. But they're created for my own department out of the data sources that I can get off of the Banner reports, or that I get from my dean's office. And a lot of that has been me requesting specific data sets. Like my dean's office, research dollars was a big one. I had to go to my assistant dean, and ask for a report that I'm sent monthly that tells me what our research expenditures are across all of my departments. Now, we don't have that level of information in the Tableau format yet, but eventually, hopefully we can do that. So that one of the key things we wanted to do was make data available that DHs need, and make it easy. Because all of us can probably get these data if we wanted to, but we've got to know which data are available, where to go to get it, and then we've got to usually we've got to ask somebody to get it for us, because we don't have the access to the raw data sets. And so this initiative is really about figuring out what data people want and trying to make it available in an easy way, so that you don't have to spend the years building a dashboard like I did. Just because that's what I do for fun, because I'm that boring. But it's a challenge for me, and it's useful. So that's how I've done some things. I've been able to use. One of the questions was, well, how do you use these data? Right? Someone suggested in the chat, can you do another whole workshop on how to use the data to do particular things? We can come up with lots of examples. I built my dashboards, and the reason I'm interested in being on the task force is to provide those, to make my job easier and make my colleagues' jobs easier. And so little by little, we get this done, and we're making progress. We're a far sight further along than we were a year ago. And the Provost IT team has done a great job of that, but there's still a really long way that we can go to continue making this available. Imagine imagine writing an annual report and sort of to summarize everything in your department. You're going to want to have everything in there, from enrollment data to degree granted data to information about progression through the program. Where are your students going? Those data are out there. We just have to know to ask for them, and then we want you to help us tell Provost IT what to prioritize next.
For example, I was really excited about the prospect of being able to get the degree plan data, because I need those demand signals. I need to know that if this particular faculty member goes on leave, yes, I do need an adjunct to offer that class that semester, because I've got a large N of students interested in taking that course. Now, at the moment, the degree plan data only really captures the undergrads. The graduate degree plan data is not yet in there, but that's one of the things we're pursuing aggressively, is being able to get those data. Heather explained that the students don't file a degree plan until they get to the 30-hour mark. So it really tells you more about those upper level electives than it does about those undergraduate courses. But those upper level electives are the smaller courses frequently, where I do have doubt about whether or not I'm going to want to offer that course in any particular semester. And this kind of information just really helps me do my job better.
All right, so I think we're slowed down on the chat. So I think that's probably the end for today. But again, thank you. And please, if you think of things after this meeting, or as you're working on with the dashboards for your department, again, please send suggestions or issues to us, because it will help us prioritize work on these dashboards. This type of information is available to department heads and chairs at other AAU institutions. And so we would like it to be available to us here too. And we'll keep working on that over time. So thank you, everybody. And thank you, Heather Wilkinson and Blanca, for letting us present here today and share this with the heads. We're hopeful that it will help everybody. So thank you all.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you, team.